I want to thank you all for joining us today. This is just a press conference that we wanted to put on, and the theme being, Are you vote ready? A way to convey what we as a department are doing and have been doing to get ready for elections, as well as what we'd like our voters to to convey and to convey to them as far as what they can get ready. Um, a couple of facts before we go into some of the things that more recent occurrences some of the things we saw at Commissioners Court today. We currently have 370,000 registered voters in Williamson County. That number is constantly increasing. A lot of folks are mailing in their applications to register to vote, walking them in. We're quite busy with that increase, and we expect to see those folks. We expect to see those folks continue to register to vote up to the deadline. The deadline is October 5th. A voter can register up to October 5th and be eligible to vote November 3rd election. We will be staying open until midnight on that day, Monday, October the 5th, at our office to accept those folks that walk in their voter registration application. We also expect to receive quite a bundle of voter registration applications after October 5th when the Secretary of State's office, with the instructions from them to consider those timely. They do this for all 254 counties across the state, and they'll be mailing those in, and we'll be efforting very hardly to get those included in our voter registration database for our poll books for the election. This election, of course, is probably going to be the largest one that anyone's ever seen in our county, at least. We can tell that by the number of registered voters. We can tell that by the number of applications we've currently received for ballot by mail. We're currently at 27,000 requests or applications for ballot by mail. That's easily over twice as many as we've ever received for any election in the past. Our largest was, I think, 12,000 or 12,000 and change in 2018. We're at 27,000, and that's constantly growing. We're seeing a lot of new folks that are applying for ballot by mail for the first time, be they folks age 65 or over that have traditionally voted in person in the past and have decided, possibly due to the pandemic, to vote by mail this time. And in aid of that, we've set up a website application off of our website to aid folks that apply for ballot by mail to check the status of their application for ballot by mail, to check when we've sent them their ballot, and for the lion's share of the folks that have applied already so far, our first mail drop is scheduled for this Thursday, October 1st. We will be mailing the first batch of domestic ballots by mail to these voters. They can check after they've completed and returned them the status of the receipt, whether we've received them back or not, and they'll also ultimately be able to check to see if their mail ballots have been accepted or rejected by the early voting ballot board. It was a way to kind of stem the tide that we've been seeing of a lot of phone calls, mail, email, folks walking in wanting to know if we've received their application, when's the ballot going out, and certainly those kind of calls that we'd be getting if we've received their ballot. A lot of folks have concerns about the service level at USPS, the Postal Service. We're starting to see return ballots already from our overseas and military voters. We had to get those out relatively recently, 45 days out before the election. So a couple Saturdays back, I believe. And we're already starting to see those come in. So it looks like USPS is doing their job and giving priority to election mail, as we've been told they will. The governor has extended the early voting period from what would be 12 days to 18 days. So the early voting period begins on October 13th, a Tuesday, and goes through October 30th, a Friday. 18 days of early voting, where in our county, we intend to be open all 18 days for early voting in person. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. will be the voting hours for all of those days, except for the 2 Sundays. The 2 Sundays will have voting from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., but a robust presence across 19 early voting sites throughout the duration of this extended early voting period. Our goal is to convince as many folks as possible that either traditionally or have always wanted to vote on election day, convince them to take advantage, if they are indeed going to vote in person, take advantage of these 18 days across 19 sites in the county where they can vote in person. Traditionally in elections like these, we've seen about a 2-to-1 ratio of in-person voting, 2 folks voting, early voting for every 1 on election day. We want to increase that ratio towards early voting, where we can have a majority of folks already vote and take advantage of that time. We're still going to see long lines on election day because it's a presidential election, and folks, for whatever reason, may wait on that day. We're telling people to expect lines on election day at the 57 election day vote centers that'll be in place in the county. There may be lines the first couple of days of early voting on the 13th of October, the 14th of October. In 8 of those lines, voters will be able to check, as they have for several elections now in our county, check on the wait line times at these polling places, be they early voting or election day. Our poll workers are trained and will continue to be trained to give very rough estimates of the wait times at their places and update them regularly. We have an online map that a voter can check with their phone, particularly if they have location services enabled. The app will be able to tell where they're at, show them the closest polling places, and through red, yellow, green icons, show them how long the estimated wait time is. And we feel, and we've seen it in the past, it gives voters informed choices that they can make as far as where to go and commit to voting. We think that's going to be helpful. Part of the governor's resolution that extended early voting also allows now a voter to walk in their ballot that we've mailed them, walked it back into our office. And there have been quite a few folks that have expressed an interest in doing that due to how they feel, their feelings of maybe not getting robust service from the USPS. They're able now to do that, walk that ballot into our office as soon as they receive their ballot and complete it. Before this suspension of the part of the election code, the law reads that they can only do that on election day. But the governor has suspended that part of the law, and now those voters can walk their ballot back into our office, and only our office, as soon as they've received their ballot and completed it. And we will safely log that receipt. They'll have to present their a photo ID, sign a signature roster, and we will secure those ballots for processing at the early voting ballot board like we would any of the mail ballots that we receive through the mail. Let's talk about some of the things that happened today. Today was a pretty busy day for us in terms of Commissioner Court agenda items, and I appreciate the staff and the other departments that helped us prepare for that. I guess of largest note, and it was really good news, is the court agreed to accept an award for this from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, an award that we can use to really enhance the safety of in-person polling places and just the general administration of elections. The amount of that award was $263,000, $263,644. And it was extremely welcome. The very next item after accepting that award, the Commissioners Court agreed to increase the polling place election worker wages by $3 per hour across the table. We're hopeful that while we have been relatively successful in poll worker recruitment for early voting and for election day, we still have spots to fill across our early voting sites, where we intend to have a whole host of folks that will need more than we probably would need in a normal election in non-pandemic times. Early voting workers, supervisors and clerks, election day judges, alternate judges and clerks. We intend to staff with some more folks at a site, and we hope that increase in hourly wage will aid us in filling in those gaps that we may see across the board. We're getting a lot of applications from new folks that are essentially volunteering, although they're being paid, to work as an election worker, and we're doing our best to get those names to the party so they can be placed as clerks. Inevitably, we may see some vacancies pop up at the last minute, those last minute no-shows, either at some point during the 18 days of early voting, but really during election day, where we're going to need full staffs at all of our 57 sites. And in aid of that, the Commissioner's Court has led departments to a volunteer program in county departments where employees in departments can enroll to be kind of standby poll workers on election day. It's our hope to have a very significant pool of emergency poll workers that will be trained by our staff, and then on election day be ready to leave their county job from their department for that day and be placed in an election day polling place if the need arises. It's something that we've never tried before, but if we've seen anything from really March in the county is that the Williamson County departments have really gone above and beyond and volunteering their time and their effort to help with the general effort and getting through a pandemic. And a lot of departments are chipping in, and we just can't say enough about the thanks that the HR department, the audit department, the Commissioner's Court have done in leading these departments and considering lending their employees to us for election day. So we're very hopeful in that. Our vote center locations, the 57 of them were approved today. Our poll worker, as far as our judges and alternate judges, were approved today, as well as essentially the joint election. This joint election is not only the election for president, U.S. Senator, Congress, on down, through the state, district, and county races. We also have many city, school district, and municipal utility district races to the tune of about 49 or so participating entities in this election. Several of these entities, you may know, were originally scheduled to have their elections in May and opted to postpone, once the governor allowed them to postpone, their elections to November. It makes for an incredibly long ballot, really, for any voter. We have sample ballots on our website. Any voter that lives in Williamson County can look up their specific ballot style. We also have, if you want to see the length and the extent of all the entities participating in this election, we have what we call a newspaper or composite ballot, which is a 3-page, 11-inch by 17-inch, 3-page PDF set of all the races that are going to be on the ballot and across all the ballot styles. And I think it's helpful. It's a helpful illustration to see just the magnitude of this election, by far the longest that we'll ever see. Compounding matters, and where we stand today, this was to be the first general election without a straight ticket voting option. And that's how we planned and programmed this election. It inevitably means a voter was going to be taking more time in front of their voting terminal at a polling place. Right now, where it stands is let me back up. Friday, a federal judge in Laredo ordered in a lawsuit to reinstate straight ticket voting on ballots in Texas. And yesterday, the Fifth Appeals Court, or the Fifth U.S. Court of Appeals, granted a stay to that order. So we're kind of in limbo right now, waiting to see if what we understand is the temporary stay becomes a more permanent stay in a couple of days. We've got our machines, the voting machines that we're using for in-person voting during early voting and election day. The programming is set and ready to go. We've already had our public logic and accuracy test where we actually prove up that the programming works and that the selections that a voter makes are the actual results that are reflected by those selections during the tabulation stage. And we're currently preparing machines without the straight ticket voting option. If this were to change, it would probably necessitate a new public logic and accuracy test. And as y'all are well aware, the window is closing for us. We've got to have machines ready to go and deployed well before that first day of October 13th, first day of early voting. Well, we'll wait and see what happens. We hope to have a resolution to this before the end of the week where we can determine what route to go with our in-person voting. We had the benefit of experience in the July 14th primary runoff. We had a one-party primary runoff, the Democratic Party, that had 3 races where we were able to introduce procedures and protocol for the safety of poll workers and voters at a polling place. It's really well reflected by a 2.5 minute YouTube video that we have on our front webpage that Connie's office and her excellent staff and multimedia team put together in English and in Spanish that really details the precautions that we have in place for poll workers, the social distancing expectations of machines and voters, the PPE that we deployed and have in place, and the offering or the reminding of voters that we offer and have always offered curbside voting at these places. We're taking that model that we had in the primary runoff and we are just scaling it up for the November 3rd election. We're asking our poll workers that participated in that primary runoff how well they thought things went, things that we can change, things that we can improve. And we think we've got a pretty robust plan for in-person voting going forward, whether that be masks and face shields that we will require our poll workers to wear, the shields that we have at the check-in table to give that extra layer of protection between the voter and the poll worker, the social distancing of voting machines that we have in the polling place, the expectation to have social distancing in the line of voters, the offering of curbside voting that we have at our polling places. And if there are voters that show up with any kind of symptoms or express any kind of concern about their health, they're going to be able to vote at the curb in their vehicle. And every one of our polling places, be it early voting or election day, will be prepared to handle that. One of the most important notions that we want to get across, both to our poll workers and to our voters, is that while we require and recommend voters wear a mask at the polling place, they will not be required to by law. And this puts some folks back when they call into our office with the expectation that they've got to wear a mask at HEB, at any other government building where they conduct business with. They're just assuming that there's going to be a requirement for voters to wear a mask at the polling place, and that is just not so. We hope all voters do. We really request that voters be considerate of others and of these poll workers that are working innumerable hours and days for this election, and they consider their health as well as their own health. But there's not going to be a requirement for a voter to wear a mask at these polling places. So we're trying to get that information out there. We're trying to encourage folks. Another reason why we want to encourage folks to consider voting early, spread out over 18 days. I'm hard pressed to accept an excuse from really anybody if they're not able to find a time during 18 days, including weekends, 12 hours on Saturdays, 5 on Sundays, where they can get to one of our places located throughout the county during early voting and vote. But if they can't, they'll still have 57 options to vote on election day, but there will be lines. So we encourage folks to look at that video and have questions. We're happy to answer them at the office as far as the procedures and the protocol that we have in place at the polling place. We have an online application at www.wilco.org/ballot-by-mail status, where again, the voters can check on the status of their applications in ballot by mail. With the upcoming voter registration deadline, we have an address of www.wilco.org/voter-info, where folks can check to see and confirm that they're registered to vote. They can change their address. We advise them to if they've moved either into the county or within the county, get those addresses updated so they'll be able to be served with the proper ballot style when they check in. There's now, and this is encouraging, folks that either renew or change the address on their driver's license at the DPS website are now able to register to vote online through that DPS portal. So we're hopeful that folks are being able to use that. It's kind of our Texas being forced to dip their toe into the waters of online voting. We've seen quite a few registrations or address changes come through the DPS system to our office through that way. And we think we're optimistic that we can prove that kind of online voter registration works and carries on to the future, perhaps even be made law someday soon. Connie, I don't know if at this point there are any questions that you'd like me to address.
I do have a couple questions. How much is a polling place worker normally paid?
Really good question. Typically, and before we had this grant that was approved today, the wages were going to be $10 for clerk, an alternate judge, and $12 for presiding judge. And we were able to bump those up to $13 for clerk and $15 per hour for the judge.
And then how many polling places
So for early voting, we've got, a minimum of 10 plus at many of our sites. Um, we're going to need, we think our need is going to be on election day, where there won't be an election day vote center or election day site, and there's 57 of them, with less than 10 poll workers at them. We're working on, or included in the list of vote centers that was approved today by Commissioner's Court, are a couple of what we call mega centers, places that we're going to use and be able to put a whole bunch more machines in, socially distanced, plenty of parking. We're very, very optimistic that we can have a lot of folks vote at that place, per hour on election day. And those sites may require 15, 20, but all told, we're looking at a minimum of 600 workers for election day, but probably surpassing that. And like I said, we're relying on the parties to have their judges bring in poll workers. We are getting a lot of applications, and we encourage folks to send in their applications. And you can do that off the poll worker link on our main page. Fill out an application and mail that in to pollworkers@wilco.org. And we'll process those applications and let you know when we can get you in a training, because we have training beginning well before the 13th. I think it begins in a week or two, and going all the way through up to the weekend before election day. We'll be training poll workers with dozens and dozens of classes. So we're hopeful that we can get these spots filled throughout the polling places.
As a follow-up to that, is COVID the reason you are short poll workers, or are people not willing to take the risk?
That's our assumption, yes. And given that the demographic for the typical poll worker is one of retired age, they've been very reliable. Some of our best poll workers are, age 65 or older, and that is, I think we'd all agree, one of the more susceptible populations in the pandemic. So some of them have expressed just an unwillingness to risk it for this poll worker, for working in elections. And we understand that. And we're still doing the best that we can to protect poll workers, both inside the polling place and those that work at the curbside. And at the same time, we're encouraging more folks to apply and hopeful that we can fill those spots.
They're also asking if they can get a text version of the ballot, so instead of when you go online, you can find your own, but I know you've made that available to the media in the past, like the entire ballot.
Yes, so you can go to our website now, and I'll try to do that while we're here. And let's see here. On our front page of our website, and that's wilco.org/departments/elections, you'll see a link for sample ballots, and the next sentence is a full composite ballot is available here. I think that's what y'all may be interested in, is that composite ballot. We call it a newspaper ballot. It's along the lines of what one's paper ballot may look like, but much, much larger. And again, 3 11-inch by 17-inch pages if you try to print this thing out. And it has every single race on it across all the ballot styles. But again, a voter, that's not maybe as much use for a voter. If they're at their computer and they want to pull down their specific ballot style, they can do that too. Their sample ballot lookup is the first link off of our website, and they can click on that and actually get their particular ballot style, print it out, complete it. They can even do it with the composite ballot and bring it with them to the polling place and use that as an aid.
Is there anything that you're particularly worried about, Chris, that is causing you to lose sleep?
It's a really good question. The litigation that's happening, I don't think we've ever seen so much litigation that has such an impact on how we prepare, plan an election so close to an election time as we see now. And it's essentially things that are kind of beyond our control, but we're hopeful that at some point we know what we have to do. We'll have our marching orders. We'll know what programming we go with, and that's what we use for the election. That's kind of what keeps me up. I can handle, and our staff knows how to handle busy polling places. We'll do our best with Connie's department's help to get the message out why it's important for folks to vote early and not wait to the end. We'll do our best to make y'all's jobs easier in getting results to you in a timely manner. We still hope and expect, and we will get early voting results out to you at 7:01. And then as the night progresses, those election night updates. And it's our hope that we're done and we're able to go home and watch what's happening on the national scene, just like you all will be able to.
All the questions that I see right now.
Okay.
Richard's just saying the composite ballot is not good for text.
I'm not sure what that means when they say it's not good for text. Okay. Sure.
But I think that's good. I don't see any other questions. Thank you all so much for participating.
We appreciate it. Thank you.